I'm going to begin talking soon, but I want the conversations to leave the house. Come and sit on the chairs or be quiet. Had no effect. No one's listening.
No, we just got to shut those doors.
And ask people to come, sit down or...
No, it feels a big distance between you.
We're creating more confusion. We want fewer chairs, more people. Fewer empty chairs.
Oh, stop it.
Meet your Sagittarius.
This is called creeping up and listening to Graeme Dustan. So I'm doing this session. My name is Graeme Dustan. I've got to say that. And I was the director of the 1973 Aquarius Festival. And this seems to be very hard for some people to hear because they keep telling me I wasn't. So I'll come in and I'll tell you the story. So there's been a struggle producing this Aquarius 50, but there was a struggle producing Aquarius 1973. It was chaos, folks, right? We'd never done anything like this before. Students coming from city campuses and creating an event. And as I say, a lot of madness, a lot of things happening for the first time, utter chaos. And 50 years later, utter chaos, but added is dementia. So the people working on the festival are, organising. It's a bit of a struggle for us 50 years on for Aquarius. Okay, so I want questions, towards the end. I just want to give you a brief introduction to my life path that brought me to Nimbin. And then I want to speak to this portrait by Max Maxted. It's the only portrait that anyone's ever painted of me. But Max was kind enough to do this in about 93, or was it? Maybe it was in 2000, I don't know. This is a reproduction. He's selling them. I'll sign them at the end of the... Okay, so I'm a working class boy. I come from Victoria. My parents came from the goldfields. They were refugees from the Depression in the 1930s. My father got a job as a driver for the defence industry and held that job for 35 years. Heavy Transport Division of the Commonwealth. And the aspiration of the clan was to have someone go to university. And I was the first of my working class family to get to university. And at that time, the working class had access to scholarships, Commonwealth scholarships. You just had to have a good pass in the leaving and you can get to university. So there was this influence in the university in the 60s of working class people coming in to get degrees and saying, this middle class, upper class idea of a university is not working for us. So there was a kind of student revolt, massive, it was a global phenomenon. And I was part of it first at the University of Melbourne, then at the University of New South Wales. I'd gone straight from high school to Royal Military College, yeah? This is initiation by fire, I promise you. Your feet as a cadet, new cadet, total confusion. They work you all the time, you know? And you're super fit, right? And a bit crazy. So I did it for 3 years. I went from being top cadet in the first year in my class, first top cadet, you know, there were, how to describe Royal Military College. 65 young men, we're all males, 18 to 19, supercharged on West Point and Sandhurst combined. These days, it doesn't happen like that, but that was me. Top of my year in the first year, and next year I'm the most punished cadet, and the third year I've had enough. I'm out of there. I come to university determined to get an engineering degree, and work hard. What Dustan taught me was how to pass exams. It was a very handy skill. You swat at the last moment, absorb a lot of information, reproduce it, and then on to the next subject. I was very good at passing exams when I got to university, so I had time to get involved in student activities, and soon became president of the Labor Club. And as president of the Labor Club, I was a leading activist and stopped LBJ's, we planned it, from University of New South Wales, stopped the motorcade when LBJ came to Sydney for All the Way with LBJ. Remember that? You know, that's a bunch of us got in front of it. I got under it, other people followed me there. So this ruined my career. I was never going to be an engineer, but I did get a brief stint with ICI ANZ as a computer programmer. Then I wanted to come back to university and study sociology. Yeah? I had all the technical stuff. I had an honours degree, graduated. At university, I'd been editor of the paper and president of the Students' Union. I'd been to the Australian Union of Students conferences and had become this activist on campus. And my philosophy was, this is where I introduced, watch what was happening with the protests, and they were boring, yeah? I could see that what was happening with the protests in the street was the community that was creating was the major difference, not what was being said by the approved left-wing speakers on the stage, but what people were bringing to the protest as celebration, yeah? How about I speak without the mic? Is that better?
It's working. Yeah. No, you're working. Yeah, don't worry about the mic.
The idea then became to organise resistance. It was to build communities, yeah? So I didn't have speakers on stage. If you went to a left-wing planning session, they spend all their time talking about who's going to be the approved speakers, yeah? I was in about, well, how can we make it a great event? Who are going to be the musicians? Who's going to dance for us? Right? So this idea of creating resistance and culture at the same time was born there. Yeah? I was dead set against conscription because of what I had experienced in the army. And now I became a kind of cultural entrepreneur with an engineering degree. Yeah? Organised protests, produced newspapers, skilled up. In '71 I came back to university to study sociology, got picked up by the Students' Union again and invited to be the director of student publications, looking after Wendy Bacon. People know Wendy Bacon? Yeah. Yep, she was the editor, I was the publisher of Thoreau. I ended up being arrested with her and being charged with indecency. You're looking at someone indecent.
I can tell that.
We know
Oh,
that.
you know that.
No.
And the next year I became the editor. By fluke, an editor was appointed. I was the publisher. I had to appoint the editors. The editor was killed in the car smash, and the editorship was open. No one seemed to want. I picked it up and did a year as editor of Tharunka, and I committed it, part of my sociology research, to research the counterculture. What was the culture that was coming out of war resistance and resistance to conscription? It seemed to be flourishing. Lots of changes were happening. So each edition of the paper, and there were 16 of them, had a guest editor on a different theme. And themes were like, themes of the counterculture were like, the first one that comes to mind is anti-psychiatry, with Harry Freeman produced. There was one on food. We did a women's liberation edition with the first woman's editor ever of a student newspaper. Spirituality, I said, Whole Foods. There was a whole range of countercultural issues. Some original articles, a lot of reprints. And at the time, Tharunka, student paper at the University of New South Wales, was being produced for a larger audience. It wasn't aimed at student issues so much, it was aimed at cultural. So we got huge distribution. It used to hang around in people's houses for a while. Big notice. But this put me in contact with the ideas and the cultural movers on these different issues. Now in 1971, there had been an Aquarius festival, which was at the time a student arts festival produced by the Australian Union of Students, Culture Run, which was called Aquarius, the Aquarius Foundation. In '71, they did it on a campus at ANU. And it was a riot. No, it wasn't not on the university. Every day there was a protest. When you brought students together in those days, it was volatile. They'd come together, look around and say, I don't want the US war in Vietnam. Let's go to the embassy. And off people would go. These were big protests, baton charges from the ACT cops and all this kind of stuff. It was an amazing reflection. What the consequence of bringing the best minds of our generation, people that want to tour, want to travel from all around Australia to do student arts, bringing them all together led to big protests. So the question arose for us, for Johnny Allen and I met Johnny Allen at the festival, what would happen if we took this festival off campus? We wouldn't have the protests, we'd have people looking inward about what the peace was going to mean. Now that we'd won the anti-war movement, we'd stopped the war in Vietnam and we had ended the conscription. Yay! What was the peace going to be? So I put this together in an article after a long talk with Johnny and thought nothing about it. It was published in National Youth, went all around Australia, and the next year when I was getting desperate with a temporary teaching position, I got a call from the Australian Union of Students. Why don't you apply for the job of Director of the Aquarius Foundation? Of Director of the Aquarius Festival. Bingo. They flew me down to Melbourne, interviewed me, and after they appointed me, they said, oh yes, we interviewed someone else today, and that's Johnny Allen. He's going to be Director of the Aquarius Foundation. So the two of us who had had this discussion about taking the Aquarius Festival off campus and making it a counterculture, the fate had brought us together with office support and a salary, right? Small, my position was funded by a grant from the Peter Stuyvesant Foundation. I was supposed to be smoking a lot of cigarettes. Smoking joys sincere. Anyway, so that's how it begins. Johnny Allen and I, on the first day, in this new headquarters for the Australian Union of Students, no furniture at that time, sat in our office, didn't have signage on the wall, nothing on the walls, on the carpet, what have we got to do? Where do we start? And the first thing, I'm being a good Marxist from my brief time, we need a manifesto. That's what Marx would have done. Write a manifesto. So that's where the manifesto came from. Johnny and I had a conversation about dreams for Aquarius. I wrote it out that same day. I went to local newsagents to find stuff to, stick down with the layout, and had it printed by that afternoon in the Australian Union Students' Office. So that's the beginning. First the ideas, then how do we find the site? Where is this promised land? Not easy. We decided we couldn't go into Queensland because the Belky Joe was beating up students. So it had to be in the north here, and the bit that we had, there was a place called Maynard Mullumbimby, Yemen, where the communes, the guy from Sydney had gone there and bought Finn Village. This is gold scatting. So we actually go from Canberra after a meeting, I think it's the August meeting of the Australian Union of Students. We drive from Melbourne overnight, through the night, to Mullumbimby and get to Cole Scattergood's place the next day in the afternoon, expecting we're going to be received with grace. Right? No Cole Scattergood. We didn't make any arrangement, warning we were coming. We don't want you anywhere near us, right? We don't want you in Maynard. We want to be invisible. We don't want hippies. If you do it in Mullumbimby, we'll tell all the locals what a terrible time they're going to have because of hippies coming to town. Right? So that was a bit of a shock. We thought he'd like the idea. But then we became aware that hippies were moving to the country to be invisible. Right? They wanted to hide and up country roads and things like that, grow their pot and not have anyone bother them. We were setting out to build a city on a hill. We're dreamers. We want to be noticed by everyone, right? By each other in particular, but also. So the next day before we left, next morning he said two things. That Nimbin's a good place to look for land, right? Not here. Go over to Nimbin. And there's a guy called Paul Joseph, he said. And Paul Joseph had been living in his community, Finn Village, but they'd fallen out. Paul Joseph wanted to produce a festival. We said, we'll have to go and visit. So we did. We drove from Finn Village to Palmwoods, where Paul Joseph had a kind of a banana shed. People know what banana sheds are? Yeah, they're basic sheds, very up on top of ridges where there were bananas. And that was his kind of retreat place. So we took the directions and we drove round up the hills until we ran out of road. We were right up on a ridge. Walked the last 50 metres to this banana shed. And there is this beautiful yogi. Okay. Paul Joseph, 6'6", long hair, slender body. I've never seen someone beautiful. So a man. A yogi, so beautiful. We shared a joint. We explained our idea to Paul, and he rolled up his swag, hopped in the back of our car, and came with us. Right? From that moment on, Johnny Allen, Graeme Dustan, and Paul Joseph were the team for Aquarius. Also, the owner of the car, Vi Turl. Vi had been the cultural development officer at Armidale. Her father was a squatter family, had given a car to live in Armidale, and she had lent the car to me so that we could find this site. I tell you, we couldn't have found the site without this gift from Vi and her father, right? Anyway, Vi became part of the team. She gets mentioned in the Sydney Morning Herald article, you know. She was a great, how do you say, communicator, getting people inspired to work on the festival. The next gig, as I recall, is that we took Paul Joseph up to Brisbane, you know, for a meeting with the crew who eventually produced the food. They were called Harpo, and they were a kind of hippie entertainment, theatre group, plus food, whole food business. They started up the first food cooperative on the University of St. Lucia campus. Paul liked my rave, I'm a great presenter in student politics, but I liked his singing. And when we came together, we were a powerful match. I'd give the rave, Paul would do the performance, which would have us singing anthems. I've got to kind of describe this later. I've got the tribute to give to Paul later, so I won't go on about Paul. But it led to the idea of this, how to produce the festival. The path to the festival had to be the festival, yeah? So every meeting we did, we tried to give them the taste of the festival, the Aquarius festival would come. Now some people go, oh, you're old hippies on the floor. But other people would come out of these sessions inspired, right? I'll do anything for this. This is where my life will change. They knew it. So that's how the festival came to be. We had terrific support from the student papers around it. They all printed the copy that we were producing up here in Nimbin, encouraging people to come. The rest of the stories you know about the trains and all that kind of stuff. I just want to say how the event was created. The part of the festival must be the festival. So we called for volunteers to come to Nimbin, and they began to arrive, and it was chaos, as I said at the beginning, but also serendipitous. We were blessed. I mean, there's something happened. We called it Nimbin magic in the streets of Nimbin. You just have to think, oh, we need to get this happening. Bingo, someone would appear with the tool or the method or things like that. All just happening, Paul Joseph used to say. It's all just happening. Why do you need people to work in the fields? It's all just happening. We've got to drink the drains. We've got a crowd coming. They're going to need showers and water and, bridges and things like this. We need volunteers who work. Paul Joseph sitting in Allsop Park, surrounded by beautiful young women. The fashion at the time, I'm allowed to talk about sex at the Aquarius thing.
What's fashionable then?
The fashion was beautiful satin petticoats and no underwear. So, I remember this circle of women sitting around Paul Joseph, all of them beautiful, and Paul just, the hero. Oh, they were the times. But Paul, his idea of the festival was celebration. My idea of the festival was dig the drains, do the work. Paul's saying, it's all just happening. And I'm saying, yeah, it's only happening because we crazy people are out there.
This is your engineer mindset. What? This is your engineering background coming into yeah.
Okay, that's what I want to say, how the festival came to be. And I want to say about eventing, about creating events and try to understand it as a kind of shamanship. Yeah? Now I got a teaching on this, and it came from the teacher of David Gulpul. I met them on a tour in Canberra. This was after the festival, some years later. And he was trying to make conversation with me. And the essential thing for this young man from Arnhem was you have to know the moiety, you have to know the skin before you can ask the right question, or whether you're allowed to ask the question, or even associate with this person. You have to know their skin, right? So he's kind of questioning me, trying to work out my moiety. And Jungen was actually, his English was so thick I couldn't follow most of it. And so eventually he broke it down to make it simple and said, there are two divisions in the moiety system, Wudoi and Jungan. And essentially, you must be Jungan, because Jungans make events, right? Wudoi go to events, right? This was like a snapper of learning for me, you know, this one. Because me as an event, he said, you must be, yeah, I do events. I imagine them, I have visions, and then I work systematically to put things in place, do the preparation, and the event comes to pass. Wudoi people do not know where the events come from. They begin when they arrive at the hall, yeah? They begin when their ego's engaged, yeah? So they don't see any of their preparations invisible, yeah? Two people, more Wudoi than Jungan. But there's another consequence. So, this is the portrait. Painted, I think 93 or maybe 10 years later. But it has Max here. It has me creating something out of nothing. Yeah? It's a kind of a magic, yeah? People see this, they don't see this. Yeah? This is the curious thing I want to start talking about. It was very difficult for me to get a place to talk on this program. Yeah? Jenny Kendall. I talked about the difficulties of the program. Hijacked the program for post-Aquarius. So the program that she produced, you have to have been in Nimbin 4 years before you will know all the people that she engaged in. The Aquarians were not on the program. There's nothing for the first 4 days. No welcome to the Aquarians at all. And so there's no inclusion for me. She does not recognise. There was a session on art and activism.
Organise it yourself then, Graeme.
God Almighty, if I'm not an artist activist of some years, for me, the Aquarius Festival was my activism. You know, that's what I was doing at the time. Not included. But thanks to Michael Balderstone, a space was made and I'm able to talk to you today. Why am I invisible? This is the question I'm asking.
Why not?
Really?
Do I want to be invisible? Good question.
You're not invisible to me.
I
Super fast.
think you're redoubtable. I don't think you're invisible.
Redoubtable.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm a Leo. Yeah, I'm a Leo. I need a lot of feedback. But I'm also a magician. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the consequence. This seems to be the dynamic of it. Is that the visionary comes along, the shaman who has the vision and begins doing the work. The thing, usually an event, is what I'm talking about, comes to be. People are inspired and they want to do it again. Another group comes together, yeah? And it gets kind of formalised. Norming, storming, you know that thing about the way groups form and solidify? Well, once it forms for the second stage, once they do, the committee has formed, it begins norming. The people who produce the events aren't normal.
No, because they're outside. So every time I have an event that works, I know it's succeeded when they won't let me in. Right? When I start like a music thing or some kind of thing, I know it's working when some smoothie comes in with a, with an agenda and wants to get paid for it, and I just spend 6 months making it happen. You know, when it happens, then somebody else has to come in and take over. That's why you're a shaman, right? That's why that's why you're invisible, because you're like Merlin. You know, Merlin only comes in our time of need.
Correct.
Right? That's why he's still living in the cave waiting. Right? Yeah. That's why you're a magician. Magicians don't get paid, mate.
And they don't get noticed. They're not visible and they're in conflict always with any structures like kings and gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah? So this is, I guess I want your empathy. How different.
So I've had an empathy
How difficult to work so hard to create an event and then discover you're written out of it. This next generation comes in to run the events. The first thing they do is knock off
the creator, yeah? Because it's more theirs that way, yeah? Removed from power.
Don't forget, Zeus had to kill his father.
Kill his father?
Yeah, Zeus had to kill his father.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my story. Being invisible in Nimbin. Well, maybe I'm not. Any questions, folks?
Your activism for the aging Aquarians.
The aging of Aquarius?
Well, how do you keep it being an activist
Yes.
when you're chronologically challenged?
I made a great decision 25 years ago. One was that never again work in the public service. I had a job with the Kane government as a festival consultant. You know? I might get recognised in Nimbin for my festival work, but Don Dustan came out of retirement and head the Victorian Tourism Commission, and he had a vision of tourism development that involved festivals. The way you create tourism destination is to make the culture accessible by bringing forth festivals. You know? Festivals that reflect the culture. They might be a wine festival or a dance festival, a music festival, whatever. And he appointed a unit, and I was one of the 2 festival consultants who galloped around Victoria, creating events. Why am I telling you that? Events. It led to me, you know, being engaged in cultural policy. We began thinking about cultural tourism, tourism that benefits the culture rather than extracts from it. Yeah? Actually creates employment for musicians, or in our case, the comedy festival. We said, what's the competitive advantage Melbourne has over other cities in Australia? It's got all these comedy venues, or it used to have back then. So we said, okay, let's bring them together and create a comedy festival. And the state government would fund the promotion, and the existing entrepreneurs in the business would put the program together. And we'd get, because of the support from the government, we'd get a media sponsorship from The Age in Melbourne. So the festival took off, yeah? And we were good at this, our mates. Creating events was the subject matter. What do I want to talk about?
You should talk about not being in the public service and not being an activist over there.
Thank you for reminding me. But I burned out. I realised you can't create enduring cultural change working for the government. It's only a matter of time before in the public service obstacles are created for it. They tell you, they'll get you briefs, we want you to make change, Graeme. We've hired you to come here and get it. And the next thing, they're challenging your parking place, you know? It's like you're battling to get anything done, yeah? So having burned out, I've been really successful. Nah, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to work, live on the dole, and create change. This led to Peace Bus. This is yeah, it's a tradies van, and I've been living in it. It's got signies on the side and speakers on the roof, flag poles on the roof rack, and banners and flags under the bunk. And I travel around doing actions, yeah? And I like actions that have preparation to them, yeah? So I go and camp at, say, Yeppoon, Rockhampton, for Talisman Sabre military exercise, and prepare an event by making art, painting flags and things like this. So you build the event, and the path to the festival, path to the protest, becomes the protest in the end. So that's what I was doing, yeah? That's what I've been doing for the past year. John Shipton ordered me. No, John Shipton took me in. So I'm pleased to say I've got a refuge with John Shipton's place where I can paint Assange banners and dress protests with John's companionship in this part. And what makes it all the worthwhile? What makes activism worthwhile? I have to tell the story, won't I? So Ananda is sitting beside the Buddha. In one of the, they didn't have, in the beginning, they didn't have ashrams or monasteries. People gave them places to camp, and the monks would assemble there. So it's a beautiful day, and Ananda's sitting beside the Buddha, and he says to Ananda, Ananda's not enlightened, by the way. So the Buddha has to correct him all the time. But it's a fabulous memory, right? Everything the Buddha says is recorded and turned into oral history. But the Buddha, Ananda says, don't teach until I'm there, yeah? So he's key to the teaching. And when he says this, I'm beginning to understand that companionship is most of the holy life. And the Buddha snaps back. Don't say that, Ananda. Don't say that. Don't make that part of the teaching. Don't say that, Ananda. Uplift, Kalyana Mitra it's called. Uplifting noble friendship is the whole of the holy path. Anything more, says Ananda? The whole of the holy path. So this, the fundamental teaching. The companionship of the road. The companionship of discovery. The companionship of production. Producing something. The struggle of all this. This is the holy path. Yeah? This is what makes it all worthwhile. Yeah? And why do people love Nimbin? They come here and experience this friendship amongst people. Yeah? There's depth in it, compassion and care. Yeah? So a lot of mad people come here. There's lots of disturbances, and yet it rolls on. Any other questions?
I have one question, if I may, unless somebody else wants to go first, because I've talked so much. Somebody else like to go first, and then maybe.
Well, I just wanted to say something, Graeme.
Yeah.
I'm Kevin Fell. I haven't seen you for, I don't know, 45, 50 years or something.
Yeah.
For the benefit of other people, I was a student at University of New South Wales in 1966 to 71, I think. So Graeme was a big feature of my life then. I remember your campaign for President of the Students' Union. You had a poster where you had your hand reaching up inside a vending machine trying to steal a can of Coke. I don't like to, sorry. I mean a chocolate bar. I don't know if you remember that poster. And I was there at the LBJ thing, but I didn't throw myself into the car, I must say. I just waved placards. And I still have I've got box-mark nostalgia in my basement, and I've got quite a lot of copies of those issues of the Runkers, so if you're looking for one of them, you never know. I might.
We should have them here.
Yeah, look, I didn't think of it, but anyway.
I think so.
Yeah, all right, well, I can, I'll find them.
All good.
Make them available to someone. And I just wanted to say, you changed my life in many ways, and you're not invisible to me.
Where are your old friends, Johnny, on the Love Creek Workshop?
Yeah.
Why don't you give him your young? You're so beautiful young. Oh,
You want the
no.
the people at the back can't hear us all.
Oh, what a shame.
I can hear you. I'm in front of you, though. Look up, Harry.
I'll try to calm down.
You got to turn.
Oh, I've got to go for 2 minutes. I thought you turned it on.
I tried.
It's working.
Oh, the
Now.
I was just at Tuntable Creek Co-op today. What happened there? The White House, you can't see it anymore for the glory of trees. And a beautiful community they built out there. We drove all the way to the north end. Sri Richard and Strawberry still there out there. And Colin and Jens. And Maggie is about to come. Glory to get Maggie going to the north end. Yeah. However, as we reached that, I was driving me by your roads and I looked at the landslides. I also remember, Johnny, that we were young and we walked along Terrain Creek in native costume. You with very little on. Well, none of the other men had anything on either, that we went totally dry. We were fucking nude. Walking from the White House down the creek all the way all the way. And I just said, that's just all I remember, as well as fine, baby, and, you know.
Any memories of Aquarius? Other people?
Okay. Does anybody else have a memory they want to share of Aquarius? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that old. It was very impressive the way the toilets and the showers were so well organised, and the recycling was extraordinary. The bins, if I remember, 44-gallon drums, and the biggest sin you could commit at Nimbin was to put your rubbish in the wrong bin. I think it was...
So in the sin bin?
Yeah, recyclables, decomposables, furs, whatever, yeah, I think there was, wasn't there? But anyway, it was very impressive, and it's the fact that everyone smiled at each other too, that was quite a memorable experience, where there wasn't this hostility, there was this extraordinary acceptance that I guess it came out of the times, but it did, as you said, it changed the whole culture of this country, and congratulations. I memorised the manifesto and I put it into practice every day of my life.
Oh. Can I ask about the recycling? It was the first recycling garbage collection system of any festival anywhere, right? This was the architect students, you know, suggested it. Recycling was the thing. Just today, one of those architect students arrived with their report, right? So when they went back to university, they had to produce a report on what they did, like building the toilets or building the bridge. These are beautiful reports.
So it was an assignment?
It was an assignment, yeah, but they camped up here to do it on 2 occasions. It's a wonderful document. Let me recommend, it's down at the archives in the community centre. Recommend you see it. So you get, when you hear about the toilets and things like that, you get the report. How were they built? So much energy from those students who were put into the preparation for the festival. It was extraordinary. Thank you for reminding us of this. And the first recycling garbage bin. Right? Harry Trucker on the... Anyway, you're going to speak, Dominic.
Oh, yeah. I'll take this next one.
Well, I wasn't going to speak, but...
give the mic.
Yeah, I was also doing a project while I was up here too. It was on anarchy, because I was in first year sociology. And I went round and I may well have questioned many of you. I had a lot more hair then, all less clothes. But it was interesting because when I got back, and I think if I looked at it now, it was 10 questions, and it would strike me that I couldn't capture in any way, whatever, in words, what the feelings were. I should have used colours, or I should have used music, which is what I would have done now, because that would have expressed it much better. I mean, sociology was, no, actually it was political science, really happy just to get it, because I was interviewing with tape. I think I had a tape recorder, whatever. And the other great memory is actually of getting home. I got home back to Ashbury again. I could not shower with the door shut for 10 days. I have to say that, and the third thing, just as an observation, when we were taking the photo there before of the original aquariums, most of us of course, I was struck by the lady next to me because I said, you know, gee, it'd be an interesting comparison because I've got no hair now and I had really long red hair there. And she said, yeah, thank God I bought those new dentures. And I thought, the age of Aquarius is not a wonderful thing. So anyway, that's me.
Anybody else?
I hope so.
You?
I've been coming to a bunch of these talks, and you might feel invisible or whatever and all that, but to me, all of you are heroes to me. And I don't know everyone's names and all that, but pretty much everyone in this room is a hero to me.
What a wise.
I'm trying to soak up as much as I can so I can kick my mates and other people in Sydney's asses into gear to do something proper, because I lived in Greece in anarchist squats in Exarchia, and there was riots every day, police and other anarchists attacking our squats, and Molotovs and bricks going in and out of the balcony all day, every day. And I come back to Sydney, it's just like, everyone's just sitting on their hands, and I don't know what to do about it, and so I'm trying to stoke it all up to learn how to do this type of thing. And from what you said, I feel like I need to go to uni to
travel with him, actually.
maybe.
Yeah, I think that's, you won't get it at uni, mate.
There's some over here.
This gentleman took it. This gentleman came all the way from New Zealand for the festival, so let's talk now.
Hi, I happen Louis Turnberg. I happen to be at the first Aquarius Festival in Canberra, just by mistake. You know, like I went down, I used to work in Canberra as a public servant and transferred to Sydney, and my cousin moved to Canberra, so I came down to visit her for the weekend, and it was a time when the Aquarius Festival was on. And it was a great experience. I was outside the Treasury building when all these protesters ended up outside the Treasury building. I used to work downstairs in the basement on computers. But anyway, I ended up at the 73 Aquarius Festival and came up from Sydney with a bunch of friends. Had a great time, but I ended up in hospital while I was here. I got pleurisy from all the damn conditions and things like that. And I didn't want to stay in hospital, so they put me in a tent. So, you know, but a plastic bag, which was warmer than our tent. But anyway, I took the Aquarius Festival as a learning event. I came up here to learn. I spent a lot of time running around looking at different things. I spent a lot of time in the newspaper office. You know, I loved what was going on. I was actually there when the gun returned. So, you know, and then I escaped to New Zealand.
Off Graeme, at the printer. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I escaped to New Zealand when Gough Whitlam got sacked. I just thought it was disgusting, so I came to New Zealand. I've been there ever since. But I put a lot of those lessons I learned at the Aquarius Festival into practice. Started a community newspaper called the Hokianga Gumboot Express.
What? Gumboot Express, folks.
Harry Gumboot, you know what? That's a term I used in my paper. I was here to call myself Harry Gumboot.
Good one.
And yeah, so, you know, I'm still back there. You know, like this, I'm actually supposed to be at hearings for deposit of sewage waste in the Hokianga Harbour, you know. But when I was over here, they cancelled the dates and made it later and couldn't be here, but I still put in a submission. You know, we've got to fight, we've got to stop rot wherever it goes. And I think you guys are teachers, you know, you got onto a good thing and you awaken a lot of people. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think it was looking at me, I'd rather looking. I feel we need a circle now.
We got a half circle.
We've got a half circle.
Yeah, yes.
Maybe have people turn around so we can see people's features rather than...
I was a young architect working for Bill Lucas in, where was it, early 70s. And he worked really hard for the festival, and he got all his students, architect students, to work on it. I mean, and it really was the blossoming of a new way of thinking in architecture and living. I don't know whether it's, hopefully we're still blossoming.
I say so. I say so. Yeah. You know the poem, The White Magnolia Tree? People know? I paraphrase it here for you. Valiant and untamed were we when we planted the Aquarius tree. And it goes on with these finishing lines. And I thank heaven that I can still see the bloom on the Aquarius tree.
Yes. Anybody else?
You want to say more? Thank you.
I actually wasn't here at that time. I was in India and in Goa, and we heard about it. And by the time I came back, actually Tumble Falls was happening. And that's one of the things I want to honour, the seeds of Aquarius. That even like in sharing land, that you could buy a share, but you could only share it to the community, not to a developer, is a radical thing. And the seeds of this festival actually captured a time on the planet which ricocheted around the world, whether you were in the squats in Amsterdam, or it has even a thing that I really love about the principles that people have still got or put on their toilet door. And it's like in a festival like Burning Man, you have the 10 principles. And we're in a country where our culture is a bit, unformed. And these are sort of stabilising things to honour that. And with the space of what we're doing here, it's like, also as an old Aboriginal uncle said to me, the truth can only be heard with an open heart. And that's why we corroborate. And then we sit down and talk truth. And this bringing in the principle of Zorba the Buddha, the communication of joy and light and love that was happening here was really seminal. And it really captured the season of the world, like when we've marched for peace and not for war. And then the things of, again, India, and it's from Australia, they write there, how can we save the sacred site in India, the oldest known place of celebration. And they contacted the Rainforest Information Centre. So John C. John Button, they came across and reforested the most sacred site in India. And that started through people coming together here saying, we've got to take care of the earth, she's our mother, she's given us birth. And some things, principles, which were spoken and unspoken, seeded a magnificent evolutionary point on the planetary plane. And for whatever part you played in it, I thank you all.
Can I just say a small thing about being here in '73? I hitchhiked here from East Gippsland. I was at art school, a very radical art school of that time that was seeded by Gough Whitlam's decentralisation of education. And I had done an exchange with a group of environmental design students in Hobart, Tasmania, a very radical art school that was having its origins there. And our two art schools became friends through our lecturers who were very avant-garde and breaking the system. And I heard about Aquarius because we had terrific, student unions at all of the campuses because of Gough and the money that the students paid. They got free education, but they paid the union a fee. And then we got these wonderful things. So I did hitchhike up here with a girlfriend, and that moment here was so transformational. What you talked about before, Graeme, the two ways that people can behave as activists or people who attend and come to things. I came to Nimbin and I went away an activist, and I spent the rest of my life doing community cultural development. Thank you. Thank you.
I will have my word now, because I think of coming over the hill here, hits you down, and there's Paul coming down the street singing Long Time Sunshine with that description of beautiful female forms behind him, and everyone really. But the thing that I wanted to say about this festival is that, and it is evident that there's a tendency for nostalgia. This is almost a topic appropriate to the talk. Nostalgia is a curious dimension of growing older, I suppose, or having any history. But as I said down at the opening with John C's invocation, it's not just history, it's this story. This is the story, it's still alive. The bloom, as Graeme says, is still blooming. And the kids are still doing it. The kids are, I call everyone kid. But these young ones, I was with them last night, they're just hungry. They're so hungry, and they want to know, and they want to feel, and they want to do. And that lovely head, heart, hand. And it's our duty as people who've known in the kitchen to generate these aromas that says this is nourishing,
This is the nourishment that will bring the world through. And so quickening that nourishment, quickening that aroma that we know from our kitchen for wholesomeness, and I don't just mean, you know, organic foods, I'm talking about our organic thinking. So please, let's celebrate that in ourselves. It's not just history, it is this story, and this is the story we're making. We are still part of that story, each page, each word, each sentence, each word, each letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic.
Who's next?
No, anyone else want? Before someone quits, speaks twice. Which?
Let's break the rule for once and then move on.
Just very quickly, University of New England Zoology Department, we were told by the professors to think radically, stop giving lectures, have discussions, try meditation, try student union, try living in peace. This came from the University of New England, I'm recounting for you.
May I? If I may, I have a question. This is esoteric, but who's next? Who's next? Up there. Okay, coming through. Ian.
Moppy here and myself, Ojta, were both here at the Aquarius Festival that created
To this. And, but also Peter Thin, wonderful musicians, jugglers, and our vision was that, you know, the festival, part of the festival must be the festival, that people would get a taste of what it was going to be like when they got to, often with squabbles on stage.
Hans Smith, do you remember Hans Smith? He was part of the work.
Yes. Any other stories? Hang on, where's one here?
This lady first, she's got a microphone. She's got power separate power.
When I came to Niven, I felt as if I was recovering from a long illness. And it was really wonderful to be more in nature, to have that amount of time just to be in nature. And my mother made me a skirt, and I had no shoes on my feet, no worries about mousies biting me and killing me. I just had this piece of material and I went bush. And I was a bit tired, so I climbed a tree and fell asleep on a branch. And then eventually I got back to town and found that the company had been slaving over hot instruments all day, and they said indignantly, "Where were you?" And I was having a lovely time in nature. And because I was in nature, I got all this fabulous energy. So then I was really good at the rainbow that night. And I met my then dancing partner, Ronaldo.
Over there.
Forgive me, I'm having a second bite here, but I think it's a bit of a revelation, perhaps, for me anyway, that listening to this conversation and this sharing, I was thinking about when the arrests happened, you know, towards the end. And at the time, the way I reflected on that was, oh, gee, there's, you know, because it was Robert Askin making a statement during the election. And anyway, I thought at the time, oh God, that's destroyed the spirit. And the revelation I think I've had is that in fact, no. What really characterised that was the solidarity of everybody in defending those people. And that in a sense there's a link, I think you were talking about this before, Graeme, the link between activism and reflection, as it were. And I think that really came out of solidarity. And that's where the activism really came in, because we were just being called a bunch of hippies.
Can you say a little more about that?
What's that?
About that pizza.
Oh, yeah. It was towards the end, what was it, about day 10 or something? I think, and what was it?
About day 5.
Oh, this is day 5, that early in. I didn't realise. And what happened was that, I mean, they were making jokes about the narcs and everything, you know, getting around in sandals and shorts and long socks and whatever, but they were there. And what they did was arrested, as I'm telling most of you know this story, they arrested a couple of guys. And then what happened was that they were put in a bull wagon. And then the bull wagon was surrounded, and people, as I remember, got on top and they got to the side and they rocked it and they left it open, if I remember.
Yes.
And the guys got out.
I remember now.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is, if you ever talk to anybody who's heard about the Nimbin Aquarius Festival, they don't know anything about that particular event. That's something that's not often reflected on. But I think that's my revelation now for me, is that actually fitted in a way, upon long reflection. So that's my pick. That's my pick.
I remember one thing that happened was me and a bunch of friends hopped in a combi van and went up to Brisbane to meet the National Liberation Front delegation. Because this was 6 months after we'd quit fighting in Vietnam. And some miraculous things, including people getting near halfway to stop and then getting to the house we were going to before us without even knowing how to get there, because there were activist households all across the country for the Draft Resisters Union and stuff. And we had similar events. We were going through these things culturally in an isolated way around the country. Communication wasn't what it was like now, what it is like now. But we were all doing that, and when we came here, instead of being outsiders, we were the insiders. We were learning from each other. I have a really esoteric question to you as a former editor of Thrunker. In 1970, the Situationist International took over the Basel University Student Union, and they used all of the funds to publish the Situationist Manifesto and send it to every university in the world. I was wondering if it had any influence at all, because it was the prototype of punk, and it was the Dadaist message writ large. Did it have any influence at all on the notions of the cultural aspects of Aquarius?
Hello.
There you go, now we know.
One of the phenomena of being a student editor was that we were on mailing lists. And we'd get all these posters from universities around the world. There were two major international groups, the International Student Conference and the International Union of Students.
One communist, one non.
Yeah, one funded by the Communist Party, one funded by the CIA. So I saw anyway, I'm going, I don't get those posters anymore. Always been. Any questions? Anyone want to speak?
Anybody who hasn't spoken yet?
It seems to me, looking around and listening to everybody, that there's so many experiences of Nimbin as our people. Like, it was different for all of us, but it really grew something in all of us. But mainly I did want to say to you, in the earlier part of a certain sadness that I felt that you had and wanted to be commiserated with, that as the mother or father, the parenting birth channel for those ideas, that what a mother has to do is let go that old Gibberin thing of these children not from us, they're through us. And you have done that, and everyone that had some sort of idea and inspiration has done that, and it's still moving forward.
It is. The bloom is still blooming.
Aquarius 50 has been a great success. It's been a really great liberation again to be here.
A little bit of coincidence, I did about 15 months of engineering at Queen's University until I missed out on the ballot. I came down here a few days earlier and got put to work putting up hessians around the toilet and digging drains and fixing leaking water pipes and things. They must have spotted that we're engineers and put us to work on the right things. The gentleman I was speaking to him earlier, it doesn't get mentioned. A couple of other things that my memory tells me happened. In the scuffle, one of the policemen lost his revolver, and there was a big stink. I think it was returned early the next morning. And The following morning, about 10 o'clock, so mid-morning, 2 F-111s did a bit of a circle over Nimbin. No, but we sort of thought, oh, is this a message from Canberra or something?
Okay. Well, part of the myth of the festival
is that the guys from Queensland had conversations going with the cops from Brisbane, and they used to drink with them over in Casino, yeah, after the event. So they went over after Aquarius and met the coppers in the bar and had the debriefing conversation with the constables, not the officers, who said, it was amazing, the cops said. This, I'm repeating a story I didn't hear directly. It was amazing. All these cops would come in undercover, you know, dressed like hippies, looking like hippies, and say, I'm from the FBI, right, or some other policing agency, right? So they said the most hippie-looking ones were the cops. I don't believe it. I don't know. We've got another couple of minutes. What would you like to say? One more statement?
I'd just like to say that when I first came here on my holiday break from art school, I'd been here as a child and I always loved it, but I didn't know anything about it. I came here and I got addicted to the place. It was a 2-week break and ended up here for a month and missed 2 weeks of school. And then I just wanted to know more and more about it, but I wasn't reading up on anything. I was just hearing stories and blah, blah. And what came to me was what someone said before, which was that, because I had this acid trip where I drew a clock and I wrote the words evolution, revolution, revolver. I was listening to the album Revolver by the Beatles, and I just started playing with this thing spinning around, and I can't remember how I drew, if it was a spiral or not, but it was around a clock, and I realised, holy shit, it's illegal to spin. And I thought about Nimbin, and I was like, it's like, this is because also on the Revolver album, it's got the apple, and it made me think about Nimbin as being a tree, and the ideas that come out of it are all different new systems that can happen. And because nothing lasts forever, the trees are like the scaffolding, nothing lasts forever, it's all gonna fall, but the ideas are there, and they fall, they land, they rot, and that's the revolting part, which is revolution. So going full circle, you got to go through some sort of composting, and you got to go through some sort of revolting part, but they've made us think that the word revolting is disgusting. To me, the word revolting is the most beautiful part of it and the most exciting part of it. And it was because of what you have all set up here, and especially you, mate. I want to give you a lot of respect. I didn't know who to thank until today. And there's a lot of people to thank, but yeah. Anyway, but yeah, the apple has to rot before it can become beautiful again, and that's where you get revolution. And that's where things get messy, like Terania and Bentley and all these different situations. And that's not, the mess is not disgusting, and the word revolting should be changed. It shouldn't be thought of as disgusting, it should be thought of as exciting and regenerating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't forget all the people you're trained to sit in trees and save the world from
You tribute me with too much. I'm just a festival organiser. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Great opportunity to talk about Aquarians talking about Aquarius, eh? All good. We'll do this some more before we fade away.